So this was the process of ovulation, which we discussed before, that how this ovum is expelled out and it is taken up by the fallopian tube, and then and initially it is surrounded by a bunch of cells, which are the granulosa cells known as the corona radiata. And when it is fertilized by the sperm, the zygote is formed by the completion of the second meiotic division. This is the formation of a zygote, fusion of a male and a female pronuclei. When the sperm enters, the head and tail enters inside, and the head swells, which contains the DNA, and the two nuclei, one is the female pronucleus and the male pronucleus, join to form a single nucleus containing 46 chromosomes, and this cell is now a zygote. Right? And the zygote is now surrounded by just a thick membrane, this green layer. That thick membrane is the zona pellucida. Right? These corona cells, they will now leave the oocyte, and only the zona pellucida is surrounding, which is a very thick membrane or a sheet which is protecting the zygote. Now, soon the process of cleavage start, which takes 30 hours. So this step is after 30 hours. So this traveling or distance is 30-hour difference. And the whole of this process, it passes and reaches the uterine cavity. It takes 3 days. Right now, this within 30 hours, the zygote will start dividing, and the division is by the process of mitosis. And now, first mitosis, this will lead to 2-cell formation, then there will be 4-cell formation, 8-cell formation, and then 16-cell formation. And see what is happening. The size of this mass is not increasing, only the number of cells is increasing. And this zygote is these cells are surrounded by zona pellucida. This tough membrane, zona pellucida, keeps the size same. To increase the size, this zona pellucida must disappear. Right. So the zona pellucida, why the zona pellucida is present in the uterine tube? Because we don't want to increase the size, because the uterine tube is very thin. If the size keeps on increasing in the uterine tube, it may cause the burst in the uterine tube. So this zona pellucida has to be there so that the mitosis keeps on, but the size does not increase. So there will be smaller number of cells, and there's a compaction process going on. Now this is known as 16-cell stage, is known as morula. This embryo is morula, right? And this, when it enters the cavity, now this zona pellucida is digested by the secretions of this uterine cavity, and the fluid in this uterine cavity will seep in. Now this will seep in, and the fluid will accumulate in between the cells, and the cells, they will arrange themselves into groups. The cell number is increasing, and they are arranging themselves into groups. ये वो cells जो थे एक पूरा bunch बनाया हुआ था. Now they are arranging. As the fluid moves in, a small cavity is created inside, and that cavity fluid is known as the blastocyst cavity. And the cells are arranged into groups. One is forming the outer border, and the other one is in the form of a compact mass. This is blastocyst. Now you can see the size has increased, number of cells is increasing, and the size is very small. The number of cells is tremendous now. One layer of those cells have formed the outer boundary, and the other one are being collected at one end of this, right? So this is the blastocyst with the blastocyst cavity. This is now 4th day of the embryo. On 4th day, this is the it is in the uterine cavity, and the embryo is known as blastula. This was morula, and this is blastula. And now this embryo or the blastocyst will come and attach to the inner layer of the uterine cavity, which is known as the endometrium. You know this about it? The inner layer of the uterus is known as endometrium. This middle is the muscular layer, the myometrium. The outer thin connective tissue layer and the peritoneum is the perimetrium. This blastocyst is going to erode this and embed itself in the endometrium. This is the implantation. It digs in and it is embedded in. It's just like you just embed or you dig in the seed in the mud. आपने कोई प्लांट लगाना है or you want to have a small tree to be grown in it and you want to use the seeds are embedded in the mud, right? And this, the same thing will happen now here. When it comes in contact with this layer, now this will be eroded and it will be embedded within this wall, and this is the implantation process. Now this duration is 3 days. This is the fourth day. It floats for another 2 days, then gets attached on the last day of the week, sixth and seventh day, to the wall, and by eighth day start embedding. That is now in the second week, it gets embedded into the wall. Right? So the first week of development is actually this traveling through the uterine tube, and then